People who work with customers. What's the dumbest thing a customer has ever said to you? When I worked at Trader Joe's, I had someone ask me for grass-fed salmon. I told them we did not carry it because it was very difficult for the salmon to get back in the water after eating the grass. Story 2. I worked in a health food/smoothie place that was local years ago. Someone got legitimately angry that the pineapples and mangoes in the smoothies weren't local to southeastern Pennsylvania. I almost had to call the police. One of the wildest experiences I've had. Story 3. Customer was upset because she wanted to sit outside, but it was raining. She stared at me angrily like she expected me to do something about it and got huffy when I shrugged it off. Another customer wanted me to put a heater outside because it was cold. I told her we didn't have a heater. She requested that I put a heater outside anyway. Customer thought Kalamazoo was a made-up place, like Abu Dhabi. Customer wanted to rent a private room for a party. I explained that the entire business was a single room with a single bathroom. Customer insisted on renting the non-existent room. Hey, I know you're closed, but customer insists that we have a certain product despite not remotely being in the same industry. Too many times to count. Look, I know what I'm asking for is illegal, but customer left belongings at business, found me on FB, and insisted that I come open the business so they could look for item. My FB profile no longer has anything remotely related to me because of a few incidents like this. Customer insisted that I pay her tab because she had a certain amount of followers on some social media platform, and it would be good for me somehow. She asked first if the business would cover it, then for me personally to cover it. Customers have asked me to pay their tabs because they're attractive. You don't have item? What kind of place is this? The kind that doesn't have item. Anything else? Story 4. Counter at a bagel shop. It's the weekend, so the line was insane. As I'm taking a customer's order, some guy walks in while on his phone, goes straight to the counter, and starts trying to talk over the person I'm serving. To give me his order, tell him, sorry, I'm taking this person's order and there's a line. You'll have to wait your turn. Guy scowls, but takes a literal step back and just stands there as I finish up punching in the woman's order. I yell next in line. Guy steps forward again and tries to give me his order. Sorry, I need the next in line. I told you, you need to get in line. No, I'm next. That was another guy you said that to. I stared at him dumbfounded for a second, since he never even left my line of sight. Dude, I watched you just stand there. I know you're not a new person. Luckily, the people who were actually in line started freaking out at him and screaming for him to duck out of there, or he'd get his ass kicked, and he got huffy and left. Story 5. It was Christmas Eve 2018. Two of us were on duty in our upscale women's clothing shop, which we were set to close at 6 p.m. Damn it all. At 5:45 p.m., this loopy woman sachets in, rifles through the merch, and finally plucks a dress off a wall display. Would this look good on me? She demanded, while preening in a weird way. Well, you should really try it on to find out, I sensibly, and as it turned out, mistakenly said. This response of mine infuriated her immediately, and she flung the dress on our checkout counter and stormed out, yelling that she was going to report us to corporate. Yep, we both figured she was under some kind of influence. Story 6. A few highlights from the dark ages. A customer called up to ask what games were being released for PS2 that month. Every single one, I said. He commented, boring, no, until I got to Reservoir Dogs, and he said in an exasperated tone, I don't even like dogs, and hung up. The woman who asked me to go out the back and make another copy of GTA when we were sold out. I had to explain to her we didn't make the games on site. The man who insisted Far Cry sounded foreign. Story 7. An old lady told me she heard of people putting something in kids' sidewalk chalk. Another time I told a man we were closing in 5 minutes and he went, fine, if you don't want me here, I'll leave. Story 8. The crap I've heard Busho working in adult shops. The winner goes to a guy who wanted to buy a sex toy for his girl. I asked about experience. He said it was her first time, so I found a beginner's plug and suggested some lube. He declined the lube with, we don't need any of that, and wanted something a lot bigger. I started to explain that being a first-timer, she needs some patience and warming up. He interrupted me and said he was just going to shove it up there. I said, okay, sure, she gets to do it to you first though. How are you going to feel about that? Then told him he'd need to leave if he wasn't going to be respectful. He got all huffy and stormed out. I hope she dumped his ass. Story 9. I had a retail job, clothes shop, when I was a student. One day, an American tourist came in and spent a considerable sum on some nice shirts and a jacket. They were relatively expensive clothes, but the quality was very good. Anyway, after I had helped him with sizes and everything, all of which had been perfectly normal and polite, I rang him up and he said to me, now are you going to kiss me as well? I was shocked. He quickly realized and explained to me that in America, you say that in shops when the price is high, as in, you've already screwed me, so now are you going to kiss me as well? I could have put it down to a cultural misunderstanding, but I thought it was an incredibly stupid, rude, and insulting thing to say. I told him he wasn't my type. Story 10. Ages ago, I was working at a place that sold industrial parts. They were wrapped individually, then in a crate. Then the crate was banded to a pallet. It was important to pack these properly because they were small and could be affected by the weather. The shop floor guys were more than a little unreliable. Combination of hiring just about anyone who walked through the door and a shop floor team leader who didn't want to discipline anyone because he was one of the lads. So when I got a complaint that the parts weren't packed properly, I wasn't completely surprised. Then she sent me a picture. She claimed that these parts were transported with a pallet, impossible for us to load and then unload, without a lid. Yet the parts were somehow dry, and some randomly not individually wrapped. I politely asked if she wanted to ask her team if they had opened the box before she got there. Eventually, I got an email, just to say the complaint didn't need any further action as she had resolved the issue. I still think about how anyone could avoid any critical thinking, to the point to blame someone else with such certainty. Story 11. I watched a guy argue with a coworker at the register about scanning his ID for alcohol. He said he doesn't let anyone scan his ID because he doesn't want anyone to know who he is. A boss came over and told the coworker to just put in his birthday. The computer then prompted him to enter his phone number to get his points, which he then did. I told him the number is linked to his name, and he got all defensive, saying it's not the same. I asked if his name was on the phone account, and he couldn't leave fast enough, while calling me an a-hole. I responded with, I may be an a-hole, but now the company's still got your information. Story 12. Do pet sitting customers count? I know she's an Australian Shepherd mix, but I don't know what her mother bred with. Maybe it was a fox. No, sir, it was not a fox. Although domestic dog/fox mixes have recently been discovered, I guarantee you this is not the case here. Can't you bleach his fur to make it whiter? Can't you put peroxide in his eyes to make them whiter? No. I think my short-tailed cat is part wild bobcat. Again, no. Domestic bob-tailed cats exist. But my kittens are brother and sister. I don't need to get them fixed. They won't breed. That's incest. Really? Dogs don't get sick or cold. How do you know my cat is deaf? Because she clearly doesn't hear a thing. Try clapping your hands next to her head when she isn't looking at you. Nothing. No, you're not going to rehome her to someone who will let her outside near a roadway. I'm taking her home with me. Story 13. Not what they said, but what they did. For context, I work in a grocery store, and the way the front end is set up is on one side. We have some self-checkout machines, and then the registers all lined up going in the other direction. The register closest to the self-checkout is typically used as an express lane, and only used when things get extra busy. To signify this, not only is the light above the register almost always kept off, a light that people usually ignore to begin with, but there's a big metal wheelie that's used to store the hand baskets in front of it. Well, one time a couple with a large shopping cart full of stuff proceeded to slam directly into the wheelie, despite the fact that there was no one standing at the register, and again, the light was off. And instead of realizing that, they just tried to push the wheelie out of the way. I was genuinely dumbfounded when I saw that. Story 14. Not so much a customer, but when I worked in Congress, a constituent called in to express a few ideas that she wanted passed along to the congressional member I was working for at the time. While she had several unique ideas, her biggest passion revolved around border security. She was opposed to building a wall on the southern border. Okay, not too crazy, I suppose. However, this was followed by the opinion that what we really needed to do is build a wall across the entire Pacific Ocean, pole to pole, bottom of the ocean up to space, in order to keep the Chinese out. This was not a short call, and she was insistent this novel idea be relayed up the chain. It was not. Story 15. I worked at KFC in high school. This was before they got sued and had to change the name from Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC. So, on the side of the building in big letters, it said Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was a slow night, and myself and another worker were hanging out at the register waiting for a customer. In walks a little boy, maybe 8 years old. He walks up to the counter. He asks, "Do you guys sell chicken?" I answer, "Yes." It literally says chicken everywhere. I thought I was being pranked. After I answered, the kid turned and walked right out the door. While my coworker and I were scratching our heads, the kid came back. "Is it Kentucky Fried?" asked the kid. "Yes," I answer. The kid walks back out and then comes in with his whole family. His mother had dead-ass sent him in twice to ask if we sold Kentucky Fried Chicken, despite it being written on the building and literally everywhere. Story 16. Work in a pet store. Customer asked where the food for pugs was. I asked if it was just a small breed formula, or the breed-specific formula from one brand. Breed-specific formula was the answer, so I walked her over there. She stares at the bag, which has the classic fawn with mask pug on it, think the dog from Men in Black, and asks, Where's the one for black pugs? Ma'am, a black pug is the same breed as a fawn with mask. It's the same food for all colors of pug. But will this food change her color? I don't want her to be brown. Story 17. I used to work at a pet store, and this lady came in to get some supplies to prepare for a new puppy, and I showed her around because she explained she'd never had a dog before. When we got to the cleaning supplies, she became shocked, and I explained that most puppies need to be trained to go to the bathroom outside and will have accidents along the way. She seemed super confused and was like, "Why do I have to take it outside?" She asked how long she would have to keep taking it outside. My coworker and I were trying so hard not to break customer service character, like, "Lady, you have to take your dog outside several times a day every day until it dies." She decided she no longer wanted a dog and left story 18. I have two from my years working at Jimmy John's. One was a person quoting the old commercial where a person's house was on fire. So they called Jimmy John's after the fire department, and Jimmy John's showed up first. The second was a person wanting to place a pickup order. They asked if we could give them peppers on the side if they brought their own container. I told them no. This person showed up with a small Tupperware container to pick up their sandwich and asked again. I told them we couldn't do that. They then go, "Well, the person on the phone said you would." I responded that I was the person on the phone and said no such thing. They left without their peppers. Like, even if we could do peppers on the side at the time, using their container behind the line would have been a health code violation. Story 19. When I worked at McDonald's about 14 years ago, McDonald's offered free refills on soda and coffee for anybody hanging out in the lobby. Plenty of older people would come in and drink coffee together every morning and thus get free refills while they were there. Well, there was this one old dude that came up to the counter and demanded a refill of his coffee with his personal thermos. I was the only person working the front counter that morning and knew that he had not bought any coffee that morning. So I told him that refills are only for customers who stay in the lobby, and the refills are only good for that same visit. He started screaming at me and showed me his proof that he deserves a refill. The proof? A receipt for $1 coffee from weeks before. I do not miss working in fast food. Story 20. I once had a customer genuinely ask me why he shouldn't stick a tampon up his butt. We had to have a very clear conversation about flared bases. And no, this wasn't at a sex shop where a conversation like that might be appropriate. It was at a Walgreens. Story 21. I've never forgotten this. Back when cable was still a thing, I worked at a customer service call center for a cable company. A man called in upset that the Weather Channel's weather forecasts were always wrong, and that they're always saying it's going to be sunny and then it rains. He was 100% serious too. He was so irate. He yelled into the phone, "Well, what am I supposed to do if they say it's going to be sunny and it rains?" I told him, "Well, sir, I guess you could carry an umbrella just in case," and told him he has to call the actual Weather Channel in Atlanta, not the freaking cable company. Story 22. Paint department at hardware store. Guy hands me a color chip and asks for some paint. Okay, what paint line and what finish? There are different paints for different situations. Guy, I want this one. Waving the color chip in my face. Doesn't that tell you what you need to know? No, dumb idiot. It tells me what terrible color you want in your kitchen, and that's it. Second runner-up was the guy who was sent in by his wife for paint. She specifically asked him to get gray. He decided he actually wanted green, so that's what he got. Wife called 30 minutes later asking why we gave her husband the wrong color, and could we please remake it? Nope. You'll be paying full price for your husband's choice. Story 23. I was working third shift at a gas station at 20 years old and had been robbed the week before. It was a big deal because the robber was in the middle of a week-long spree. The surveillance footage was on the news and in regional newspapers. This man in his late teens/early 20s came in. As I was checking him out at the register with customers lined up behind him, he stared at me for a moment, and then his face lit up. He excitedly yelled out, "You got robbed!" Annoyed, I just responded, "Uh-huh." Oblivious to my mood, he asked, "Well, what happened?" Not missing a beat, I said, "I was stabbed to death." He yelled, "Whoa, really?" Then he went quiet. The light faded from his eyes. He paid for his order and left. Story 24. I run an after-school program that also provides care during winter break, spring break, and summer programming. Regularly, I get people who cannot conceptualize that enrollment fills before deadline. When I let them know that, although the deadline for enrollment has not yet come, spaces have been filled, it breaks their brain. For example, I had an enrollment open for 5 weeks, and the day that registration closed, I had a family get enraged that there was no space for their children during one of the days. They had 5 weeks to sign up, and they waited until the absolute last day. The idea of first come, first served does not compute. Story 25. I used to work at a spa with a girl named Maria. One day, she called back her client and introduced herself as is standard procedure. The client looked her up and down, held eye contact, and said, "Why are you named Maria if you're white?" It was very hard for me not to say, Because that's what her parents named her. Story 26. I was shopping in a store. I didn't work there or anything. I was a customer. Another customer asked if I could check the back for something. I said, "What?" She asked if I worked there. I said no. She thought about it for a moment, then said, "Can you check the back anyways?" Story 27. I worked at a beach club during the summer. We would pre-make the salads in the morning. There was one woman who would always get salad and ask for no onion. One of us would have to pick out the onion. Since she ordered so often, we started making one for her with no onion. The first day we gave it to her, she said we were lying because she didn't see anyone pick the onions out of the salad. We told her we made them for her specifically, but she didn't believe us. So we would have to pretend to pick onions out of a salad every day for the rest of the summer. Story 28. A friend of mine who worked in a bookstore tried to help a customer find a newly released, within the past week, mystery novel by a very popular author. They were sold out. She checked on the shelves in the back room for more, but still no luck. The customer got a little annoyed. "It's sold out at the distributor. Why don't you have any for sale here?" First of all, how did he know that? Also, as if that guaranteed stock at the retail store, the guy left in a huff, and the manager told my friend that was the author of the book, showing her the guy's picture from another one of his books. You'd think the guy would have been happy the new book was selling well. Story 29. Made a guy a milkshake and he didn't want it because it had whipped cream, and he deadass said to me, "I can't have dairy, so I don't want it." I don't want the whipped cream. This was a day I was crashing the duck out too, so I told him, "Sir, the whole goddamn thing is dairy. You're gonna take it or you aren't. Either way, it's no longer my problem." Story 30. Work at a breakfast spot. Taking the order of this lady who is in her 50s or so, points to the omelets. "So does this seafood omelet have eggs in it?" Me. "Yes, it is made with eggs." Her. "Ew, never mind then." Story 31. I worked in a deli at a grocery store that had a decent cheese selection. This woman comes up and asks me if they had the cheese her friend had at a party. I asked what kind it was and she was like, "White, strong, and delicious." I asked for more information and she argued with me and yelled at me because I didn't know which cheese it was since, most of them fit that description. I told her to call her friend and ask, but she couldn't because they were fighting. It's been 10 years. I wonder if she ever found her cheese. Story 32. Worked at a store that was going out of business. We had all the liquidation signs everywhere that stated closing forever and going out of business. Everything is final sale. It got to a point in the liquidation where gift cards to this store no longer worked. They even got rid of it as a tender option on the registers. And of course, a woman comes in a few days after we stopped taking it as a form of payment. She explains she's late, but we need to honor her gift card. Unfortunately, I couldn't and explained this to her. She then screamed at me and said, "I hope you lose your job." I pointed to one of the many going into of business signs and said, "I am, idiot." Story 33, that they couldn't find their bathroom in their hotel room and that the room didn't actually exist to start with. We had to physically walk her to her room twice in one day as she said it wasn't there. When I went to her room again, she stood shouting that the hotel was the worst she had been in because there was no bathroom. I walked past her calmly to a door behind her, opened it, and then walked past her to leave the room to her incredulous, "Oh, it's there." Once had a guy in a ground floor corridor ask where the lift to reception was. I pointed out it was not the Willy Wonka chocolate factory and that our lifts only went up, not sideways. Story 34. Some grouchy lady demanded I change the length of the timed crosswalk because she didn't have enough time to get across the street. Told her no problem. I'll log into my email and take care of it. Lady, I work at a rec center. Story 35. All right, so my country has time limits when you can buy alcohol. The old time was you can buy from 8 in the morning and no more after 10 in the evening. New one is 10 to 8 in the evening to 6 on Sundays. Ladies pick a bottle 30 minutes before end time, go to register after end time, and argue how we should still sell it. Some old men said the commissioner of a wholly different country gave them permission. German students arguing that them being German means we must sell to them or they will die. One guy drank half a bottle in the store and tried to argue he doesn't have to pay for it anymore. Story 36. I worked in a convenience store where we sold lotto tickets. All the regulars had a folder where we would print off tickets for them each week and then they would come in and pay later. One week, I forgot to print the tickets for this one customer. His tickets were always $40 and it's the same numbers each week. So he came in to collect the $30 he knew he had won. When I told him I forgot to print it, he was furious and demanded the $30. I tried to explain that it costs $40 to print the tickets, so technically he would have been down $10. He just couldn't understand and argued for so long. Story 37. I was working at a buffet in a casino. It was breakfast, and a woman walked up to me holding a packet of G-Jelly and asked, "Is this the only orange marmalade you have? Because I don't like it." I said, "No, I'll get you a better one." Went into the back, grabbed orange marmalade, traded her for the G-Jelly, and never told her how dumb she seemed to me. Later, I wondered if maybe she had some problems with her vision. but she seemed to walk around and view the rest of the buffet just fine. Even if she was illiterate, there were pictures on the jam packs. I still don't get the confusion. Story 38, stocking the chicken in the meat department one day, and this older lady walks up and asks, "Where's your turkey beef?" I figured she meant ground turkey. Ground beef? No. Turkey bacon? Turkey sausage? No. She walked off angrily, and I never did figure out what in blue blazes she meant. Story 39, when I worked in jewelry retail, we did custom design. One customer took the CAD home, scanned it, went into Microsoft Paint, and manipulated the diamonds to bend. Came back the next day and asked why we couldn't bend the diamonds like he did in Paint. We offered different cuts that would give the illusion of bending, but no, he wanted the damn things to bend. Couldn't understand why not. He was also a structural engineer. Story 40, I was a pub manager. I asked some lad for ID and he pointed to his tattoo. I asked again for ID and he again pointed to his tattoo and said, "Obviously I'm 18, you have to be 18 to get a tattoo." I turned around, pointed to the tattoo on my right shoulder blade, and told him I was 17 when I had that one done. He didn't have any ID and kicked off when I said I couldn't serve him alcohol. But he could still have a soft drink, and because he was such an idiot, I ended up kicking him out and barring him. XX Story 41. One woman was late in returning her materials. She complained that we had not called her personally to tell her that they were due soon, and that the library had been closed when she tried to return them. I told her that the library's hours are posted on the door and the website, and that due dates are on the receipts. She said, "I don't read that." Well, what does she want us to do? While there are some automated email reminders, I do not think back then we had text ones yet. The truth is, she needs to take personal responsibility for her materials. Story 42. My wife was working at one of the few open retail outlets during the darkest days of COVID lockdown. Customer says it's terrible that she has to work in that situation. She managed to not point out that it's people like him who are the reason she had to work. Story 43. We didn't have an item at the pharmacy I worked at. Dude asked me if Walmart had any in stock. Deadpan looked at him and told him, "I don't know, I don't work at Walmart," and he legitimately seemed surprised by that answer. The sheer amount of times I had this interaction was insane in the 7 years I worked there. Story 44. I worked in a 1-hour photo place 20-something years ago. I had a customer come up to my counter and very sincerely ask me, "How long is 1 hour?" We both laughed after I stared at them for a second and they rephrased. They were actually asking if we were busy and if they'd actually be able to get their photos back in an hour. But the way they phrased it cracked me up. But Story 45. During the beginning of COVID, we were deemed essential, but since we were still figuring things out, we could only let 10 people in the store at a time. I can't tell you how many times I'd let one person out and someone with their kid would try to come in. I'd say they need to wait until another person leaves, and they'd say my kid doesn't count. I'd inform them their kid is actually a person, and they'd have to wait, and they hated that. Story 46. Well, you guys better give back that money. I work as a bank teller, and someone mistakenly wrote and deposited a check into the same account it was drawn from. They noticed on their statement a miscellaneous debit the day after the deposit. I had explained right away what they did and why the money got taken out as a result, and they seemed to have understood, even laughed at themselves for it, and said they meant to write the check from their account at a different bank, but then genuinely made that comment. I thought they were joking. Story 47. Selling fish at the counter in a supermarket with over 10 species of fish and about 20 kilograms of each fish on display. Me. "Good morning, Mom. What can I get you?" Customer. "Good morning, young man. Some of that fish there, please. You must get up very early in the morning." Me, confused. "I start work at 6 a.m. That is pretty early, I suppose." Customer. "Oh, I would have thought you get up much earlier than that to catch all this fish and prepare it for sale." Story 48. I unfortunately had a fine gentleman that all the staff avoided because of all the random bees he would talk about. If you happen to cross paths with him while working, grocery store, very seriously, tell me that any item in the store that has enzymes in the ingredients list was lying. Those enzymes weren't actually enzymes, but condensed polluted Chinese air that was put into food to poison the West. Or another lady that was all about natural remedies, complaining we only had regular turmeric and not the specific special medicinal grade turmeric she heard about online. Story 49. I was managing a store that was going out of business. Huge signs everywhere saying store closing, everything must go, everything 90% off. I was constantly asked things like, "Are you moving?" or "Are you getting new furniture?" I would tell them the entire company's going out of business, and they'd ask if a different location would be open. It was endless. The best was the 90% off questions. They'd hold up a $10 item and ask how much. When I'd answer $1, they wouldn't believe me and ask me to ring it to make sure. Story 50. I worked in customer service for satellite TV. A great many people, mostly women, vehemently denied that anyone in their family would order that. We're talking adult film pay-per-view 25 years ago, when free adult film was not easily found on the internet. They would insist that their husband, who worked shifts, or their sons didn't order it. We were accused of just adding the charges to the bill to make money. Never mind that we could tell that the PPV was ordered through their own receiver or by calling us. Story 51. Work in a supermarket. Was filling the milk and a customer goes, "Where's the milk?" I stand there, don't say anything, and with eye contact, just look down at the milk. Dolly customer typically says, "Oh, I'm so blind," and laughs it off. Story 52. As I was walking out of the airport, a random passenger grabbed me and said, "How long is the flight to Toronto?" I told him I didn't know, as I wasn't going to Toronto, nor had never been to Toronto. Flabbergasted, he replied, "But you are a pilot?" And then he just walked off before I could respond. Apparently, I'm supposed to know the flight time of every flight in the world that also change every day. Story 53. Someone asked me for directions last week. I gave her very clear instructions. Take a right out of the parking lot. In a mile, there will be a light. Take a right at the light. That road leads right into the middle of the city she was trying to get to. When I was finished, "Yeah, but will I know where I am?" I just looked at her and said, "IDK friend, will you?" She was like 60. "Ma'am, how did you get here all by yourself?" Story 54. Can I break apart this bunch of bananas? Are these bananas ripe? Middle-aged man, probably bought zillions in his lifetime. Where is item as they're standing in front of it? Do you guys have this meat seafood item? Asking the produce guy. Go the meat counter and ask there. Do you have more mangoes in the back? Sure. Goes back, brings more out. Oh, sorry, I meant yellow mangoes. How am I supposed to read your mind? Story 55. How big is a 14-inch pizza? But that's not even the end of the story. After I and his wife and 2 kids laughed at him, he was gracious about the stupid. But then he says, how many slices is it? So I then had to explain fractions to him. I can slice the pizza any way you'd like. 4 slices, 8 slices, or 12. But you're each only going to end up with 1/4 of a 14-inch pizza. Story 56. I had a woman screaming at me if our TV service included the channel Team Niconaise. I asked if she could spell it. She couldn't. Somehow, she got her son to say it as Teen Nick Jr. Imagine being shouted at for a channel that doesn't exist and getting stuck explaining to her for over an hour that they were different channels. It wouldn't have been one of the dumbest things if she wasn't screeching in my ear about it with full confidence. Story 57. I used to work at a seafood restaurant, and a lady asked if she could substitute her fries and coleslaw for a steak. The only steak we carried was a 14-ounce T-bone, which was about $16 at the time. I told her the list of normal sides that she could substitute: rice, baked potato, steamed veggies, or salad, but she insisted that a steak was the same thing as fries and slaw. She spoke to the manager, obviously. Story 58. Customer yelling at me for not having their order. Looked for it in the system and couldn't find it. Asked for their email confirmation and it was a completely different pizza store. Not even same brand. Instead of apologizing, they said, "I still should have known what they meant," and made it. Story 59. Hairdresser had a client message me 7 weeks after her root retouch demanding a refund because her color faded at the roots and was now gray. Explained that would be correct, that 7 weeks of growth would in fact mean your roots need redone. She flipped and wanted to speak to a manager/boss. Joke's on her, because I am the boss. Eventually got to the bottom of it and she believed her hair grew from her ends, not her roots. Story 60. The number of people who just blindly emailed me their account username and password, their full credit card details, their completely irrelevant home address, etc., even worse, because it was customer service for a product used by schools, teachers, and admins, would send their students personal information like that, just plain text in an email. Often the first email they were sending about an issue, not even mid-conversation. So dumb. Story 61. Recently, someone asked me to check on their warranty for some glasses and I couldn't locate their profile at all. And I kept trying different ways for like 5 minutes. And in the end, they were like, "Well, I got them at Walmart. Don't know if that makes a difference to look me up." We're at Target. I tried my hardest to not make them feel dumb. But damn. Story 62. I work at a hotel and guest took a bunch of substances. He needed to charge his phone. Guests have stood our chargers too many times, so sold him some. He come back with the cord in the phone, and the power box in his hand says, "It's not charging." I had to tell him, "Box goes in the wall. One end of the cord in the box, other in your phone." Damn, I'm being weird. Story 63. I work in retail, and this guy and his girlfriend were trying to return pants without a receipt. He told me he recently bought them. Since they didn't have a receipt, I looked up when they bought the jeans through their loyalty account, and he bought them a year ago, told them our return window is 30 days, and they asked, "So you can't do anything?" Like, no, a year is longer than 30 days. Story 64. I work at a place that has a little grocery store scanner that lets you scan rewards account QR codes. About 30% of the time I tell people to pay, they attempt to scan their card with it. I've also seen multiple people attempt to use Apple Pay on it. I've since implemented the card readers right there into my monologue so that I don't suffer from the cringe of continuing to watch this. Story 65. At this point, it would be easier to tell you when someone didn't say something dumb. The thing I get most often is people telling me that their information is incorrect because we made a mistake in entering it. Then I have to verify that is correct on their paper application, that they filled out by hand and had notarized that it was correct, and then getting mad at me that they put the wrong information. Story 66. I worked at an electrical retailer. One time I had a customer tell me that they'd like to return the digital camera they bought because all of the photographs they were taking always turned out dark. Needless to say, I tested it, ran through every setting on the camera, and couldn't replicate the issue. Turns out, they didn't have the flash on at all, and the only times they'd use the camera was in the evening. Story 67. I used to work in collections, and you would not believe the number of people that would tell me they were gonna put their bills under their pillow and pray on them. Surprise twist, those bills didn't get paid. Story 68. I've had flat earthers, moon landing deniers, but I think what takes the cake is the guy that confidently and constantly, more than 2 hours, tried to convince other customers that our gas prices are set by the lizard mafia. I lay awake at night wondering if he lost a bet. Story 69. How much does a 10-pound bad weigh? The first one I ever got was, where's the dog food? It was my second day at my first real job. I was putting a 40-pound bag of dog food onto a stack of other bags within a wall of dog food that was 20 feet wide. Luckily, a more experienced employee took over because my brain locked up. Story 70. Not directly to us, but passed along in the instructions. They wanted us to rotate a chair in a photo, not around the axis where that would be possible, of course. They wanted us to take a chair that had been photographed from the front and rotate it to a profile shot from the side. Naturally, we sent that one back unaltered. Story 71. We literally had a customer try to leave, only to come back to tell us that the door was broken. I accompanied her to the door to watch her push on it, but it didn't budge an inch. I literally walked up to it, paused in disbelief, and pulled the door open with one hand. She thought I was a miracle worker. I feared for the future of humanity. Story 72. Back in the late 60s, I worked in a hardware store, and a customer asked if the electric drill on sale was ambidextrous, if a left-handed man could use it. This incident occurred in the late 60s when electric drills were very Spartan. Absolutely no ergodynamic design, no multi-speed, no reverse, and very easily used by a left or right-handed person. Story 73. Although I worked in retail for 25 plus years, this didn't happen to me. It was something I witnessed at a gas station. A lady had purchased a bag of chips at another store. She was arguing with the attendant that she should be able to exchange it for one of their chips because the other place didn't have the type of chips she wanted. Story 74. Customer. A week? I don't think I want to wait that long. Wait, how long is a week? Me. A week is 7 days. Customer. Really? I thought it was longer than that. Story 75. I was a waitress at a nice restaurant, and there was a wait. These two women got a little tipsy drinking martinis. One woman asked the other, where do pimentos come from? The other girl looked at the other and said, olives? Story 76. I had someone once ask me for a quote for some parts, not with the part number, because that would be easy. He just gave me the description. Okay, I can usually work with that, except he sent it in Italian because they were trying to hedge into the European market. He claimed he had no way of getting me anything in English. Story 77. Working at a movie theater in high school, I got the dumbest of the dumb for customers. Why did you set the prices so high? As if me being a teenager had the power to set prices, and why aren't there any good seats left? As if I were supposed to save them a seat while they were running late to a popular movie. Story 78. Where are the protein shakes? At the pharmacy desk. Listen, I've never been to this store. I don't know where the pharmacy is. It's right over there at the back of the store. Meanwhile, pharmacy is in huge letters right above the desk. I said I've never shopped here before. I don't know where the back of the store is. Story 79. But Walmart when this happens. Costco's policy is blah 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 for returns and exchanges. Then buy it there next time. We don't share the same rules and policies. Story 80. I used to work in fine art sales, but we sold prints of the artist's originals. People frequently thought he painted the exact same thing multiple times in varying sizes, and that's what they were buying. I had to constantly explain that they were high-quality prints, and that's why they look so nice. Story 81. A disheartening number of people have asked me a question and then responded to the answer with something along the lines of, I don't care about that. Then Karen, why'd you ask? Story 82. Cosmetologist. There are people out there who think that hair grows from the ends. They don't understand that it grows out of our scalps. Both of these clients came back about 6 weeks after having highlights, thinking that the highlights fell out at the scalp. I don't think one of them believed me. She still thought she was right. Story 83. I really don't know if it's dumb, but I had a lady nearly in tears tell me that the potting soil had a tear in it and it was now contaminated and shouldn't be on the shelf. I know nothing about potting soil. I was 17 and working at Kmart, but she was seriously emotionally invested in houseplants. Story 84. I worked in an arcade area of a restaurant and was at the prize counter. A preteen asked, "What color is the red bracelet?" And I briefly stared at them before responding with, "Red." Story 85. I worked in a gardening store and had a lady ask how the sundials worked. I explained how to place them and read them, etc. Then she asked, "So, this won't work in my living room?" Not unless your house is entirely made of glass. Story 86. At my old pizza shop, I once had a lady ask me to cut her pizza into 6 slices because she didn't think she could eat 8 slices. It wasn't until I was cutting her pizza that I realized how stupid we both were. Story 87. Got asked about chicken on sale when another location claimed we have some. Told them not, as we didn't. "Are you hiding the ducking chicken back there so you can buy it all?" "Yes, sir. I'm hiding chicken from customers so my coworker and I can buy it all." Story 88. I don't know if it's the dumbest, but it happens a lot. Customers buying age-restricted products will pitch a fit about their ID being scanned because they don't want their purchases tracked. Then they enter their rewards number. Story 89. I used to work in a pizzeria, and no joke had a vegan fellow insist to me that both Parmesan and bocconcini were vegan. I literally had to go and grab the containers they come in and rattle off the ingredients to him to get him to believe me. Story 90. Worked at a small pretzel kiosk in a mall. We had like 7 options in total for toppings, could request 2 or more on one pretzel, and had some teen come up and ask if we had a Kendrick pretzel. I was actually so dumbfounded that I didn't respond at first. What's the dumbest thing a customer has ever done? Story 1. Took a customer call and complaint that we sell faulty sod. Asked them to describe it. "It's already brown. I just bought it yesterday." Looked up the order. Sure as crap. Dude bought a full pallet. Told him since he bought it the day it was delivered and it wasn't hot enough, there's no way it's already dry. It's not dry, it's just brown, like mud. Asked him to take a picture and email it to me. I'm at the desk, so I'll get it right away. Dude had installed an entire pallet's worth, 480 square feet of sod upside down, as in he laid it down grass side down. Asked him to lift one of the corners up and see if it's still green. It was. "Man, I hate to tell you, it's upside down. It's supposed to be green side up." Silence. "Oh crap, really? Someone told me that was the roots." Story 2. Customer wanted to pay a $2.21 transaction with half cash and half card. Told her that our system can do that as long as she pays the cash amount first. She put her card in the scanner and told me to charge her card. I told her again she had to pay cash first. She began shouting at me to charge her card and only calmed down, for some reason, when I explained for a third time that she had to give me the cash first. Customer said okay and said she'll give me exact change. She hands me a quarter, which, as you've noticed, isn't exact change for $2.21, but I input it into the system anyways. Now her total is $1.96, so that's what I charge for her card. Seems normal. I hand her the receipt and she asked me where her change was, which made me confused. I told her she wouldn't be getting anything back because she paid exactly $2.21. She starts shouting at me again, demanding I give her her change. It took me a minute to realize that she must have thought that the quarter was only paying off the 21 cents portion of the charge. So I'd give her 4 pennies back in change. She never explained it, so that's only my assumption. I had to walk her through the math step by step to explain why she wasn't getting any change back. She finally seemed satisfied and walked off. I thought I was bad at math in school, but that was something else entirely. Story 3. Lady purchased a carpet that was 12 by 18 and told us to load the carpet through the moon roof of her Nissan Sentra. We told her no because WTF. She went on a rant about how we were just stupid and lazy and didn't want to do our job, and it was perfectly safe. We were just a bunch of idiots. Then she called corporate right there in the store, who told her under no circumstances could we do that for her. She wound up paying a couple random high school age boys in the parking lot to do it, and we saw her driving off with the roll of carpet sticking out of the roof. An hour later, she called back throwing a tantrum because she not only got pulled over and ticketed, but once she got home, she couldn't get the 300-pound roll of carpet out of her car by herself. She demanded that we pay her fine because nobody at the store told her it was a traffic violation. She also expected us to send someone to come help get the carpet out immediately because she had to go to work. She was told no on both accounts. She calls back 2 days later, threatening legal action because the carpet bent the frame of the moonroof and it wouldn't close anymore. One of the boys also dented the hood and the roof while trying to wrangle the carpet through the roof. She insisted they were employees and were liable for damages. I stopped engaging and gave her the number for legal, then called our regional LP guy. He about pissed himself laughing while watching the video of her driving off. She took it to claims court and lost. Last I heard from legal, she wanted them to help her track down the boys who helped her so she could sue their parents. She also wanted to sue the property manager. Story 4. Worked at a gift shop, and some employees would ride around the park on basically golf carts that had patterns painted on them. A customer came in with who I assume were his wife/girlfriend and 2 kids, asking to rent an electric scooter. We also had motorized wheelchairs we could rent out to customers who needed them, and a lot of people called them scooters, so I didn't think twice about it and assumed that's what he was asking about. I processed the fee to rent it, while my coworker left the gift shop to go retrieve the scooter. They had to be driven from the charging station. You couldn't just walk them out. When she returns a minute later, riding the single-seat scooter, I am in the middle of explaining the way it works and the rule about not allowing kids to just play on it or anything, and the customer screws up his face in confusion. That's not what I wanted. I wanted one for my family. Oh, well then I'm not sure what you meant, sir. Those are the only ones we have, and they only hold 1 person. No, I wanted one with the polka dots on it. A golf cart? I'm sorry, sir, but we can't rent those out to customers. They're only for employee use. So we go through the kind of complicated process of refunding the scooter rental fee, which I had never had to do before. And while I'm doing that, the customer asks my coworker if he could buy anything to drink. She nods and directs his attention to the 2 refrigerators behind him with water bottles and sodas. He looks for 0.5 seconds and then turns back around to the registers. That's not what I meant. Well, then what did you mean, sir? Those are the drinks we have available. I want to get some drinks. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't sell or allow alcoholic beverages in the park. Damn. Once the refund was processed, he huffed and walked off into the park with his family in tow, leaving me and my coworker confused. Just the idea that we would rent out golf carts to customers to just drive around the park or sell alcohol to customers, much less those 2 things together. I'm still stumped as to whether that man had ever been out in public before. Story 5. Early 2000s, before we even had plasma or LCD TVs were CRT and quite chunky. I had a lady come in my shop to buy a TV. I went through all the options and she said she wanted one that didn't need to be plugged in, as the power lead wasn't long enough and plugs were opposite side of room from where she wanted it. I explained she could either use extension cable or get an electrician to add another socket. She got really irate. No, I don't want a power lead. It's 21st century. You should have a TV that can wirelessly send power from that wall 4 meters to this TV over here. We went back and forth, and I asked how that would work. Wouldn't it electrocute anyone who was walking between the TV and the plug if that much power was just wirelessly passing through the air? She looked at me like I was stupid. No, of course not. It's your job to sell products that are safe, not mine, but you need to make a TV that works the way I want. I just explained that we don't make them, and certainly don't have any control over the law of physics, and she should write into TV company. Maybe she was 100 years ahead of her time, and to come back when that technology was invented. She stormed out muttering how useless I was. Maybe she was a time traveler or my first Karen, but it's always stuck with me. Story 6. We have a soil drive-through/pickup at my store. Pretty convenient. During the early stages of the pandemic, this guy comes in. I hear the radio call for 12 bags of high alpine mulch. Usually people bring a truck or an SUV if they're buying that much. Up comes this Miata. Guy gets out in these crafty alligator shoes and some gaudy shirt like he's going to the casino next door. Hands me his load ticket. That won't fit. I can get one in the trunk and one in the seat. Are you sure? Yeah, 24 cubic feet of stuff won't fit here. He starts stomping his feet, asks if we have any plastic he can put down. Our garbage just got emptied. Sorry, man. My temp help just took the garbages out. He starts huffing and puffing, gets up in my face and asks, "How come you not prepared for this?" Excuse me, you drove that princess car here. Bring a truck or something for hauling. Your ticket is good for 24 hours. Or you can take 2 at a time and we'll see you 5 more times before closing. Story 7. In 1993, I worked for an alarm company and we did new installations and did monitoring of alarms. We installed in alarms we didn't install. About 7 p.m. guy calls me up, his alarm won't arm and we need to send somebody out there to fix it, right? Now, in these situations, I always asked if they were sure all the doors and windows were closed and also asked them to tell me what lights were on the keypad. These 2 questions fixed roughly 50% of all my alarm won't arm calls without having to send a tech. This dude is having none of it. I checked all that. I'm not an idiot. Send a tech out here right QD now. I said it is after 7 p.m. I will have to call one of my techs at home and interrupt his time with his family to send him out there. So it will be an emergency service call, which costs double what our normal service call would be. This was 1993, so a normal service call was only $25 an hour, so this one would be $50. Dude yells at me to send the effing tech. Managed to get one of my techs to not dodge the phone call. Pre-cell phone days, so people would just not answer their phones at night, and agree to drive 45 minutes across town to check this guy's alarm. Gets to the house guy, is even more pissed. It took him that long. I mean, Phoenix is freaking huge, dude. Deal with it. Tech looks at the keypad, walks to the master bedroom, shut the window, walked back to the angry dude, said, "It is fixed. That will be $50 cash only." I had told the tech if he got paid cash, he could keep it, and I would zero the work order. If the guy had just spent 30 seconds telling me zone whatever was lit on the keypad, I could have told him a Windows was open and been done with it. But no, dude was not a git, so he had to pay my tech $50 for 90 seconds of work. Story 8. We just had our county fair. My list for this year. The guy about to walk off property with a beer in each hand. Past the 3 deputy sheriffs leaning on a marked squad. The young lady who had to be taught how to wave a flag in order to direct traffic. She held the end of the flag and let the stick drop parallel to the ground, then proceeded to bounce the flag like a teabag. The lad employed to help take entries at the motorcycle parking who went to move the barricade. He picked up the crossbar, and both legs fell to the ground. He had been taught and shown 2 hours earlier. The woman who thought it was wonderful, we got the railroad to run a train past the depot in our historical village, while leading the group of kids from the city's parks and recs. Why don't you have the AC on in the blacksmith shop? Driving a free shuttle to the parking lot. Where'd you park? To the couple riding. Across from the hardware store. In downtown, 5 blocks away from the grounds. Too cheap to pay the $10 parking. Free admission. No free ride. Plus, it's a golf cart. Not exactly street legal, or the I parked on the grass. It's all grass. By the white minivan. Yeah, 6,000 of those. Next to a dirty pickup. Farm country. But this year's winter. He borrowed a friend's car, so he wasn't sure what it was. Okay, that happens. After 30 minutes, the deputies were involved. Found it, other end of the grounds. Deputy had a feeling. Ran the name. Got no license or insurance. Actually, he's probation and house arrest. Friend doesn't know he borrowed the car and reported it stolen. Found out a few days later that at booking, he had a baggie with white powder residue, a smoked glass pipe, and had been drinking. Hope he had a good time. Story 9. We sold Tempur-Pedic mattresses, and they had a 100-day return. But we always stated it at 90 days so we could have that extra 10 days to process the return. They required that the mattress had to be in the home for 30 days before it was eligible for return. All mattress returns/refunds had to have the law tags removed, and the mattress donated or disposed of. If the mattress was stained and we took pictures upon delivery, all warranties are void. There were other qualifications, but customers never listened to the whole presentation. Never. I had a customer tell me that they were going to dump it in our warehouse driveway, to which I told them that we couldn't control how they disposed of their property, but if they left it there overnight and on the off chance it was still there in the morning, we would call the local furniture bank and they would come get it. I had a customer that complained about bubbles in the glass of a china cabinet. Somehow I got the vendor to replace the glass, and it still wasn't good enough. He told me that they just wanted their money back. Our ownership had a no refunds for non-warranty issues and no one warranties glass purity. And that's the first time I told a customer that it was our money that they had exchanged for their china, and we didn't want to give them our money for their china cabinet. That store was a dream/S to work as warranty manager for, and no surprise, they went out of business in the recession. Also, no surprise, if the customer came into the store and blew up at the counter, the owner would cave to them immediately. Story 10. I have a secondhand bookstore, and customers sometimes ask me for titles that have yet to be published. I explain time and time again that when a book doesn't exist yet, the chances of finding it secondhand are 0. The last time this happened, the lady said she was very disappointed in me because she was expecting it to be here. Story 11. Had a woman come to pick up an iPad her husband ordered online a few days before. I needed the order number and the last 4 digits of the payment card she used. Otherwise, it'll auto-cancel after 30 days and a full refund would be issued. She keeps saying her husband is in Dubai with his card. I keep explaining I can't be on the hook for an iPad. She's just getting more and more irate, saying she doesn't know his last 4 digits, and I need to process the order already. I turned the screen around and asked her what I should do to bypass the security. Oh, I don't know. I don't work here, do I? In the end, she asked me how to solve this. I condescendingly said, they have phones in Dubai, right? What kind of question is that? A sincere one. I lied, I knew the answer. Yes, of course they have phones there. Then maybe call them up and ask for the last 4 digits? She did, and it was all processed in a minute. I don't know why she wanted to argue first and behave like an adult last. Story 12. Worked at a bake-at-home pizza chain about 10 years ago that was rolling out pan pizzas. My manager made sure to tell all employees not to put extra toppings or cheese on the pan pizzas under any circumstance. Why? Because when the dough rises, it pushes the extra toppings out of the little tinfoil pan. Then, they burn in the bottom of the customer's oven. Woman comes in demanding a pepperoni pan pizza with extra cheese. I tried to explain why I couldn't do it, but she interrupted me, screaming that she didn't care and to just do it. Malicious compliance is sweet. Less than an hour later, she calls the store. I answered the phone. She's screaming and her smoke alarms are still going off in the house. I handed the phone to my manager, doubled over with fits of laughter. All of us employees were roaring and a few customers in the lobby got wind of the story and laughed with us. Same store. I got an online order mixed up with a walk-in. Online orders were brand new and weird for us. Online was meat lovers. Walk-in was veggie. I handed the meat lover's pizza to the petite 00 blonde in tight workout clothes, and she wagged her finger at me, moved her head in a crazy circular motion, and said, "This is not what I ordered." I started laughing because of her unexpected reaction. She snatches the veggie pizza and storms out, but not before stopping at the door to turn around and flip me off with a nasty pucker of her lips. I immediately crossed my legs and melted onto the floor because I was laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. I literally almost peed right there behind the counter. Honest mistake, sister. Sorry, but that is one of my favorite memories ever. Story 13. To preface this, I work in a home improvement store that has a sign in giant red letter above the exit door that says out in all but one register has a big wooden gate closing off the lane when it's not in use. We only had one register open since it was like 8 a.m. and the store wasn't busy yet. And in this register was a guy checking out a bunch of building supplies. Part of what he was buying was 16-foot aluminum roof edging, and being 16 feet long, he had it sitting across the end of the register on the carts that were there to get it out of the way. As the guy is paying for everything, a different customer walks in the exit door, which is pretty normal, walks past me not holding their phone or anything directly into the roof, edging across the open register. I don't know how they could have possibly missed the 16-foot long bright white piece of metal while still seeing that the lane was open, but they didn't even slow down. No one was seriously hurt, but the roof edging was destroyed and the person that ran into it got confused looks from everyone that saw what happened. Probably not the dumbest thing I experienced, but it was the most memorable dumb thing. Story 14, at a PC parts store. Some days I worked register and other days I worked returns. One day when I was on the register, a kid and his mom came through my line with a $45 mid-tower case, a mouse, and some thermal paste. It was probably one of the cheapest cases we had, but his mom was arguing with him over the price, asking him if he really needed the thermal paste. Stuff like that. Now, because he was getting thermal paste, no red flags went off for me. But the next day I was on the return station and they were right back there returning everything because they had thought the case was a computer. I'm not sure what he thought thermal paste was for, if not to install a CPU, but I didn't ask. He looked defeated when he said it. No eye contact. Some embarrassment, perhaps, but not just over being wrong. It was a kind of embarrassment that I'd seen before because I had some very poor relatives and had gone to a public school district that was a mix of a few different classes. The look on his face was embarrassment mixed with bitterness. Was it extremely dumb to think an empty $45 computer case was a functional gaming computer? Yes. Did that whole interaction break my heart? Also, yes. Story 15. When I worked at a certain big blue box European furniture stores LP, I had a funny call one day from our returns department downstairs. They called to explain a customer had lost 2 flat packs to his bed. He thought we had cheated him and sold him an imperfect set, and he was ticked. He and his partner argued with coworkers for a while before they called for camera footage. So I take a bit to watch the footage, and what I see is guy buys bed and other flat packs and self-checkout. Guy and partner go outside to loading zone. Guy goes and gets truck while partner sits with flat cart. Guy and partner load their items into the back of their smaller truck. Guy leans 2 7 to 8 foot long, thinner boxes against the back window of the truck cab. No tie down, no security, just props the headboard and sides of the very well-known bed-style bed haphazardly against the truck window. Guy and partner drive off. I laughed on the phone with the returns coworker as I explained that they should probably go check the side of the highway that the store is up against because that's where they will find their boxes. Apparently the dude's demeanor changed once they asked if he had tied down the boxes, and his partner goes, "Oh, that's what that bump was on the way home." Story 16. Had a customer pay $20 in cash and wanted to put the rest on the card. They then proceeded to get $20 cash back from using the card. To this day, I do not understand and cannot rationalize this at all. I was so confused. Story 17. Had a guy who told me he'd just joined a construction crew crisp dress-up shirt, slacks, and nice shoes, and drove up in an SUV, was asking for plastic to lay down in the back of his car to keep concrete dust off the floor. Understandable to a point. He then got huffy and didn't want to handle the concrete because he didn't want to get dirty, and was upset I wouldn't give him a free tarp and said he'd have to return the product as he didn't want to get dust in his car. When I asked if he was going to be working with an actual construction crew, like outside mixing the concrete and pouring it, he said yes. I laughed in his face and told him, "Sorry, pal. You get messy when working with this stuff." He was either going to have to get himself a work truck or change his clothes because the guys get dirty working out there. He got all upset and huffy and stormed off, came back a few more times, cleaned a whistle. Yeah, he didn't last long in that line of work. Story 18. I work at a smoke shop, and one day a customer comes in and sees our torches. He's bringing the torch to his mouth? I'm sitting there thinking that I'm not seriously right in thinking this guy thinks these are just vapes we just opened to put out by the front door for any random schmo to test, right? So I just say, that's a torch, right? Not a vape. Guy basically jumps and looks horrified and goes, "Oh my God, I almost pressed the button to try and hit it." Story 19. I also work in mattress sales. We had a customer, but a mattress during a thunderstorm with 30 miles per hour winds and downpouring. They lived 45 minutes away and insisted it would be fine home. Made them sign a paper saying it's their problem once they leave the lot. Even gave them an extra bag. Guess who wanted us to replace their mattress the next day and was pissed when I said no? Story 20. I was working self-check by the front door at Blue Store when I heard a small commotion at the service desk. Shortly after, an older woman came storming to the front door by me and complained that they wouldn't let her return a bra she bought recently. Me. Why not? Her. Because I'm wearing it. I deserved a raise for holding back my laughter until she left the store. Story 21. This story doesn't involve one customer, but many. The pharmacy retail store I used to work at had 2 restrooms, one for employees and the other for customers. There was a lock on both doors, so customers would have to ask to be let in. All day we let customers in the restroom, and we didn't find out the horrors within until that night when it was time to clean them. The customer bathroom had 1 toilet, and in that toilet was a mountain of crap, meaning somebody initially clogged the toilet, which happened often, and people just continued to poop in the toilet until the mountain they collectively created was higher than the seat. Did anyone bother letting an employee know? Of course not. We closed the bathroom and called a cleaning service that handled biohazards because there was no way in hell any of us were going to scoop crap out of the toilet. Story 22. I was doing outside garbage yesterday when a lady at the pump behind me asked how she could override the PIN on her company card. Company cards, I've noticed, have different requirements for payment, so I told her that. But I also told her that she could most likely skip the PIN if she prepaid inside the store, but there's no guarantee. Her response was she wanted to fill up and didn't know how much to prepay. So I told her that even if she paid too much with her prepay, her card would only be charged for what she pumped. She didn't like that idea, so I explained that if she knew the size of her tank, she could do a better estimate. Nope, she couldn't do that because it's a company car. Maybe my company was different, but our company cars had the manuals in the glove compartment. I started to mention that, but gave up. She seemed at odds at how to use tank size and fuel gauge to do a better estimate. Story 23. I'm a delivery driver with occasional store work now since switching job roles. One now is we have a click and collect van in our car park. Saw a customer hanging around at 12 p.m. just as I was bringing the van in to get restocked. Customer asks when I'll be back. 1 p.m. after the van is refilled and my break is over. At 1 p.m. I brings the van back to the click and collect point and I see this customer walking, no car. This is a come in your car. Click and collect point. I asked the customer for his surname and at first he was hesitant and gave me his order number. I explained it's quicker to just give me the surname. Eventually he does, and as I scroll through my list, I don't see his name. He shows me his phone, and there it is, an email with confirmation from Argos that his order was ready. Dumbass came to food collection, click and collect, not a supermarket catalog, click and collect, hence no car. Story 24. She came in for auto parts. When asked what car she had, her answer was a red one, and that was all she knew. We couldn't tell her what she had because she didn't drive the car there. Story 25. Had a lady ask what the price would be in a $100 dress after 30% off discount we had on it. Easy math, right? I tell her it'll be $70 and she says she doesn't believe me, so I use an iPod to scan it and show her. I tell her the original price is $100 and with the discount, it'll be $70. Even after seeing it on the screen, she still doesn't believe me. She starts ranting that I'm deceiving her and lying and trying to take her money, etc. I say sorry, but this is the actual price of the dress, and she takes it and says she'll ask someone who won't lie to her. Asks the old lady at the counter. She says $70. Then the customer storms off, saying we're both trying to scam her. Like, girl, it's simple math. Story 26. I worked at a call center for a phone company. A man called in to change his phone plan. He had been grandfathered in, so he had a great plan already. I told him I could change his plan, but that since we'd discontinued his current plan and he'd been grandfathered in, he would never be able to go back to it if he chose to change it. He said, okay. I asked him if he was sure. He said yes. I asked him again if he was sure. He said yes. I reiterated he would never be able to go back to his old plan. He said okay. So I finally changed his plan. He didn't like it and asked if he could go back to his old plan. I said no. He said okay. Story 27. One time, a customer spent over 30 minutes yelling that I was cheating her because there was no way that her 5 t-shirts could total over $80 after all her discounts and coupons. She did get the prices down from $34.95 to $16.48 each. I had to show her on the calculator that 5 times $16.48 plus tax was, in fact, $86.52. Not just once, but like 50 times. She wouldn't believe the screen on the register because she was so sure I had done something. Story 28. Had a customer bring in a fully disassembled vacuum cleaner. When I asked them what was wrong with it, they said, nothing, I just want to know how to let the air out. Like, is it clogged and not picking up? No, I runs fine. I just wanted to let out all the air it sucks in so it wouldn't go to waste. Story 29. I work in a casino in the Cage. On either side are ATM machines. Above them and in the middle of the windows, in big gaudy letter, it says, chip cashier, so people can see where to cash out. Well, a lady takes her $100 chip and puts it into the ATM slot, where the card goes. She jammed it in there, good too. She comes to the windows, all angry, and yells at us for the machine not cashing out her chip. We ask her why she would think the ATM machine cashes chips. She says, well, the sign above it said, chip cashier. Story 30. I like a very firm mattress. When I bought my new one about a year ago, the salesperson reluctantly showed me their 2 firmest mattresses and I picked my favorite. He kept telling me they have other great supportive mattresses that aren't as firm, but my mind was made up. The mattress arrived, and with it came a memory foam topper that I did not want nor order. I phoned them up and they said they had a high return rate on my mattress because people underestimated its firmness, so they now gave the topper with the mattress to offset the issue. I've had the mattress for a year and I love it. The memory foam topper has never been used/needed. Story 31. I worked for a company that sold cleaning chemicals during the peak of COVID 2020/2021. At least 3 grown-ass adults drank our disinfectant cleaner. One guy said the phone number on the bottle said to call our company if ingested. It did not. It clearly stated to call poison control and listed their number. Another lady just kept asking me if she washed her mouth out with Listerine, if she'd be okay. She evidently was storing the bottle without the cap on her nightstand and mistook it for her bottled water and took a swig of it. This crap had 3 or 4 different acids in it and people were out there drinking it like water. Story 32. I work in a small clothing store in Arizona, so we have live potted cacti all around for decoration. None of our plants are fake. Once, in the midst of a tantrum, a small child was trying to grab whatever he could and ended up reaching for the cactus on the display table closest to him. Can't blame him. He had to be like 4 years old. But not too long after, I watched a grown man say, whoa, cool cactus. Oh crap, it's real, after reaching out and full palm grabbing a mini saguaro. I guess no matter what age, people can't just look with their eyes for some reason. Story 33. I worked at Spencer's Gifts, and a woman came in with her toddler in a stroller, walked to the back of the store where we keep the adult novelties. She grabbed a large jelly-like dildo, opened it, and gave it to her child to play with while walking around the store. It was an insane thing to see. Story 34. I would have bet real money that the guys at Got Junk who came to pick up his garbage took one look at the bed that was being thrown out and did rock, paper, scissors to see who would get to take it home, not to the dump. Customers are just dumb as duck. I wish I was rich enough to throw $12,000 out and not even blink or care. Act like I was throwing out a penny and not a significant amount of money. Story 35. Not a singular customer, but an alarming amount of customers at my store do not know how to proceed past the tip screen when they're paying their tab with card. I left the tip on the table. What do I hit? The no tip button, extra face palms when they just walk up and slap their card on the machine and not read a damn thing. And when they completely miss the obnoxiously sized pin pad altogether and try to hand me their card. Story 36. A man asked me for gluten-free spaghetti. No problem, I say, and bring him to the GF pasta. Mixed types of pasta on one box. I actually hand him the spaghetti and say, there you go. To which he replies as haughtily, I asked for spaghetti, not pasta. Had to explain spaghetti was a type of pasta while trying to keep a straight face. Story 37. I managed a pet store back in the day. Had a customer call us the day after Christmas and say that her new fish and her new aquarium were drinking too much water. I asked her how she knew this, and she said their mouths were moving all the time and the aquarium was half full this morning. I suggested she check the floor for water because that's a leaky aquarium, not thirsty fish. I guess she was thinking the fish drank the water, then got out to go to the bathroom. Story 38. Worked in an office supply store 20 years ago. We had a guy come in ranting that we were liars and frauds because his wireless printer needed to be plugged into a power outlet. Dude swore up and down he was told that a wireless device could just absorb electricity from the room without the need for a power outlet. That was what he believed wireless meant. If I hadn't witnessed it, I would swear no one was actually that stupid. Story 39. I'm a postmistress. 1 in 10 people do not have any understanding whatsoever that a parcel cannot possibly be sent or delivered if it doesn't have an address on it. Having it on your phone isn't going to help unless you plan on taping your phone to the parcel. Story 40. Had a person named executor of an estate account. Had the bank cut a cashier's check to him for his share of money. He proceeds to deposit the check back into the account and write 3 checks out of estate to vendors owed by the estate. After they cleared, he closed the estate for the remaining amount to himself and others. Him, yup, perfect paper trail me. Why didn't you just write 3 checks the spilt remaining funds? Him, no, you need a paper trail. I just walked away. Retail workers, what's the dumbest thing you have seen a customer do? Story 1, the hot dog incident. This was a 7-Eleven convenience store in Alexandria near the projects. I was working behind the front register one morning around 10, and one of our daily drunks, Frank, comes in. I know this man's stolen stuff, usually beers, for her, so I'm kind of watching, but there are people to ring up, so I can't really. My coworker, though, saw Frank put a hot dog in the pocket of his jeans and told me. So Frank comes up with a 6-pack of beer, Steel Reserve, and I ring him up for the hot dog, which I saw in his pocket when he leaned forward, and the beer. This is one of the new registers, where you can see everything that's rung up on the screen, but Frank is clearly already dronish and not paying attention. He gives me a 10, I give him his change, and that's when the show starts. There are 3 other people in line behind Frank. Where's the rest of my change? I pull the receipt onto the counter and point to the change amount listed and, politely as possible, say, I charged you for the Steel Reserve and the hot dog in your pocket. Frank grows animated. What hot dog? I don't have no hot dog. I retain my calmness and say, Sir, I saw it in your pocket. Frank starts exaggeratedly pulling everything out of his front pockets, except the hot dog. See, I ain't got no ducking hot dog. Give me my change. A woman in line says, Stop being racist towards my uncle. And at that point, I am a tall woman with long arms, lean lightning fast across the counter, and pull the hot dog out of his pocket and set it on the counter and say, Oh, looks like this is a spicy bite. That costs extra. I guess you got a good deal. The 40-year-old niece has temporarily gone quiet, which is great because Frank starts yelling, I don't want no ducking hot dog. He picks up the hot dog and throws out on the ground, Keep your ducking hot dog. Give me my change back. His niece exclaims, You can't reach into someone's pocket like that, which I respond to with a, looks like I already did look, but no verbal response. I tell Frank that since you already took this spicy bite from the self-serve roller grill, I can't put it back, and you won't be getting a refund for it. Frank and his niece are both yelling now as I continue, I suggest you leave now or I'll be calling the police. Frank calls me a stinky Karen and continues to yell, but I've got my I work in retail and do not give a duck look on as I grab the phone while making eye contact. Frank continues cussing while I start to dial the memorized number for non-emergency, and he walks out the store with his beer and the proper amount of change. His niece hushes. I stop dialing, and I ring up the next man in line who just wants his pack of cigarettes and has a, it's too ducking early for this crap look on his face. When the niece gets to me, she says, You can't reach into people's pockets. That's assault. I look at her with a look just shy of rolling my eyes and ask if she wants her usual cigs. Story 2. I am never sure if it is stupidity or entitlement or a magical concoction of both. I used to work in a hardware store that was the only place in town to buy plumbing and electrical supplies. We were in a lovely old building. While cutting wire for a customer, a spark ignited something, so we called the fire department and evacuated the building. While waiting for the fire department, we were all waiting out front on the sidewalk. Up comes a regular. He tries to go into the building. We tell him no, can't go in as there is a fire. He starts in with, I just need to grab XYZ and it will be a minute. We keep telling him no as there is a fire. This went on for a long enough time that I started to wonder if he understood what the fire meant. It took the fire truck arriving and the hose going into the building for him to stop. And I wish that was the only bonkers story I had from just that guy. Story 3. Had a customer come in like not even 5 minutes after the internet went out at my store. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on when a lady walks in. Well, she wants to make a purchase, but it's with a card. So I tell her that I can't take a card because the internet isn't working, and I'm still in the process of figuring out what's wrong. I tell her I could take cash, but nope, it has to be card. She can't go get cash. So I tell her I can't do that. I get a hold of the internet company and they can't tell me when it'll be back on because they're doing an upgrade to the system. So she sits in the store for a good 15 to 30 minutes and finally, "So can you help me now?" "No, ma'am, internet is still off, so I can't take card. I can take cash, but that's it." "Well, you should put up a sign so that way people don't waste their time coming in." Me knowing full, and well, no one reads any ducking sign you put up no matter what. "Well, ma'am, it happened right before you came in, and I was still trying to figure out what was going on, so I didn't even have time to get a sign made." That's the most recent one. I've seen people try to physically open an automatic door that was locked because it was after closing hours, but they didn't bother to read the store hours. Honestly, a good portion of stupid things seems to stem from people not bothering to read a sign. Story 4. I have plenty of even dumber things, but my favorite repeat stupidity was always the people showing up before opening or after closing, with the times of operation plastered right there on the door in an easy-to-read font. And they'd still knock on the door, pull the doors, sometimes pretty violently, look at the business hours, then try opening again, walk over to the windows where the registers are, and start knocking endlessly. Then, if someone finally walks to the locked doors to see what the heck could be so important, we'd get two outcomes. 1. The customer asks the appalling question, "Are you open?" Cue every dumb meme gif you can think of. 2. They start to walk by, the employee saying, "Thanks, I couldn't get in." And you have the pleasure of explaining to them that, yeah, there's a reason for that. Best of those, though. We were talking out one night after closing. Keep in mind, we closed like an hour ago, but we're doing standard cleanup, restocking, etc. We are all saying, "See you tomorrow, have a great night," etc. And very distinctly turn the lights out and close the doors and lock them, which makes a very distinct clacking noise. We're maybe 10 steps away and sure enough there is a noise and we turn to some lady trying to open the doors that just walked past us. She turns back and looks at us and genuinely asks if we're open. People are an amazing story. 5. When I worked at a different phone provider than I work at now, a guy was convinced that his ex-wife was hacking his phone and tracking his every move, so he put it in a vice grip and smashed it with no protection nor any funds to purchase another phone and tried to return it. He had another phone he said his aunt gave him that he could have easily stole from his ex-wife. Him and we offered free SIM replacements, so I told him I was going to let my boss know that I needed to do one. He looked like he was ready to run and asked, "Why? Is it illegal?" And I said no, just so I can waive the fee. I was newer at the time and had to ask what to click to zero out the cost. He owed like $1,500 on the phone he smashed and was still financing it and complaining about not being used to iPhone. In the midst of that whole interaction, he went outside to his truck to chug a beer. Upon returning, the local police called him and asked where they can meet him to serve him a restraining order from his wife. So it turns out that he was the real stalker here. A few weeks later, he came back and claimed that his wife was tracking him through his PlayStation, but that's a whole different story. Story 6. Last year, some Karen yelled at my daughter, who was a stalker for that summer, because she couldn't find the light and fit yogurt. Mind you, she stocked over 100 items a day, and they were standing in the dairy aisle. She said she didn't know exactly where, but there's the yogurt. Cow stormed off, then came back with this. Next time you know where it is when someone asks. Some guy glumped into my store, and the resident service dog growled and barked at him, which she never does. My antennae went up. Sure enough, he headed straight for my register and gave me money to pay off a credit card. I accidentally put in the whole amount, so the change went on his card as credit. He freaked out. I had to call 2 managers because I thought he would come over the register. Another guy freaked out every time I asked questions about how he was paying. He forgot his store card and freaked about me taking personal and sensitive information. I practically had to shove the guy out of the store and away from humanity. Another guy got upset and stormed out because he thought I threw out his credit card. No, it was a used-in-store refund card that had $0 remaining. I tried explaining that like 4 or 5 times. It's not a credit card. Policy is to throw them out. Story 7. We decorate our window display to match the seasons, so we set up an artificial Christmas tree with other decorative items as a backdrop to what we sell, which is mainly plants and garden supplies. People keep trying to buy all the ornaments, lights, and decorations, seemingly oblivious to the fact we are a plant shop, despite the walls, tables, and floor which are covered in plants. People also ask us to discount the plants that are in the display just because they're in the display. They're living organisms, not collectibles that lose value if taken out of a box. The display plants also get the nicest pots in the store because the display is supposed to attract customers. I always ask if they want to buy the pot as well, and they're like, It doesn't come with it? Oh, you mean the $150 ceramic pot that was crafted by a local potter? No. They like to argue it's false advertising, though both clearly have separate price tags. Do people not understand we need to make a profit to stay in business and can't be giving everything away for free? Story 8. A young bloke comes into my hardware store to buy 4 liters of water-based paint. He's in his dad's brand new Volvo and has his girlfriend with him. Buys the paint, hops into the car, then presses the pedal to the metal. 50 meters on and the brake lights come on and he comes to a juddering halt. Then we notice a stream of white paint leaking out from underneath the car. He reverses back to my store, gets out and says, "What do I do with this paint? It's spilled all over the mats." It turns out he hadn't secured the paint can, which rolled over, popping the lid. We got him reversed into my delivery bay where we had a hose, and he spent some time cleaning the paint out before he took the car back to Dad. Lucky it was water-based. I had another incident where a customer bought 4 liters of oil-based sealer from me, went to his car, and left it on the back window shelf whilst he came back across the road to get something he'd forgotten. While in the store, a drunk driver ran into the rear of his car, causing substantial damage, but not enough to write the car off, except that can of oil-based sealer. The lid popped, the can flew through the air, and the fact the paint permeated every part of the car meant it was too expensive to repair. Story 9. Woman was attempting to steal a bunch of expensive merchandise. She was shoveling it into an opaque storage bin that was filled to overflow with magazines, makeup, vitamins, razors, and medicine. It was so obvious what she was doing. Managers from every department was following her around. She, of course, didn't get away with it because while down the seasonal aisle, she finally noticed the herd of black vests following her. If she wasn't stupid enough already, her shopping spree stopped right beside solid-colored storage bins that you can't see through, and she was oblivious to them being an option, and instead grabbed the one you can't see through. Now, during checkout, we look in every bin and cooler Jailyon case. But come on, lady, the guy who shoved a bunch, at least 20, discount DVDs into his trench coat, right in front of our produce manager. He was literally like 3 feet away. The kid you was trying to steal Monster Energy drinks with his bright as duck pink backpack. Like, okay, I get times are hard, and if you need to steal food, I'm not going to care, do it. But if you're so blatantly stupid in your attempt to get a 5-finger discount on obviously non-essential products, I really wish I could kick your ass. Not for the loss of product for the store, but for the complete lack of strategic thinking and lack of an actual brain. Story 10. We were planning to renovate our location. Big sign at the door and everywhere else for weeks, warning everybody of this and to plan accordingly, where other shops are located and how far were also printed on it. We were on day 2 of renovation. The dust and wires were everywhere. 2 workmen and the store manager were looking over the floor plans at the registers when a random person walked in with a cart, dumbfounded, and asked, "Are you guys closed?" Let me also explain what she had to do. She had to walk under tape. She had to push a trashing out of the way. She had to force the exit door open. Entrance was closed off. Exit had to be open due to fire code. She had to force another exit slide door open and then walk in with her cart. Story 11. I work at a gas station. A couple years ago, we were getting remodeled, as in register area, counters, shelves, and pumps all being torn down and replaced. Doors open for the construction people, and one worker to babysit and lock up when the crews quit for the day. So we have no registers, no pumps, etc. My boss was sitting outside and a lady pulls up to where the gas pumps would be and tries to hand her cash for gas. There's huge closed for remodel signs, yellow tape everywhere outside. My boss tells her we are closed. Customer says she just needs gas. Boss tells her we don't have registers or pumps because we're being remodeled. Customer again says she just needs gas and has cash. This goes on for about 10 minutes until my boss tells her to look where she parked. Does she see pumps anywhere? This lady points to the hole in the pump island with no pump in sight and says she's parked at a pump. Story 12. I was on break and watched a family of 10 customers file into the staff room one by one, completely ignoring the "Do not enter" sign on the door. I got up and told them, "Sorry, you can't be here. This is for staff only, blah, blah." One of them looked at me like I slapped his mother and said, "Wait, this isn't a shop?" Story 13. Countless people who bought 75-plus-inch TVs, then when I go up front to help load it in their car, they pull up with a convertible. Usually have another car at home they can bring right away. Why wouldn't you just bring that if you're TV shopping? But one customer in particular was really dumb, plugging a hole. She and her friend bought this 85-inch TV. I ask multiple times if their car can fit it so they don't have to leave it at the store after paying, and they say yes. They pull up in the tiniest convertible I've ever seen. I tell them to get another car, and they ask when they can pick it up. Store closes at 10, so I make it clear that they need to be here by 9:45 latest, or they have to get it tomorrow morning. Afterwards, we won't hold it anymore. They say they'll be back in 30 minutes. It was like 4 p.m. I left at like 10 p.m. Come back the next day, and my closing manager tells me they were outside the front door at 10:15 screaming that we scammed them because we wouldn't let them in. And they stayed there for almost an hour until my manager told them she would call the cops. Story 14. Hard to decide which one is the stupidest, but this one ranks up there. Power outage. Everything including the registers are non-functional. Customers are being informed of this because obviously the lights going out wasn't a clue, as they're asked to please shop elsewhere until the situation is resolved. I assume a combination of potential safety hazard as no power meant no environmental control, but also theft protection. Can't you ring me up first? I just have one thing. I've also yet to figure out what register customers expect me to ring them up on at a completely empty counter, as in asking me if I'm going to be at this register, a aforementioned empty counter that they chose to stop at, or that register, the next counter over which actually has a register. Likewise, the ones who will insert their card into the reader for the register that's got to have at least 3 feet of empty counter space. I've measured it. Between it and the one I've been standing in front of the whole time I rang up their stuff, complaining that their payment isn't going through. Story 15. One time I typed in the wrong UPC and charged a lady for a card and immediately voided it because I realized it was wrong. The customer asked me about it and I explained I took it off her bill. After checking out, she checks her receipt and is livid that the card is on the receipt. I then showed her where it says it was voided right under, and she yells at me, "Well, why is it on the receipt at all if you voided it?" I then had to explain to her that I cannot in fact erase ink once it's already printed onto paper. Story 16. I stepped away from my register to use the bathroom, lights off and everything. Only gone for about 45 seconds, and when I get back, 2 chunky ladies are fiddling with my equipment because they thought it was self-checkout. Everything had already been scanned, and they were trying to figure out how to pay. Never mind the fact that, again, my light was off and there were other cashiers adjacent to me, so what on earth gave them that impression? Story 17. I have worked in a grocery store for many years. There are a lot of stories of stupidity, but this one comes to mind first. It was a hot summer day, and I needed a bathroom break. As I'm washing my hands, the man who had been in the next stall came out to wash his hands. I noticed this man has a perfect 3-inch wide stripe of poop on the back of his shorts, like frosting on a Pop-Tart. I give him a heads up. He disappears into the stall I was just using. I'm a nice guy, so I grab a huge ball of paper towels to help this guy out because toilet paper aren't going to cut it. I turn to face him, and this dude is washing his shorts in the toilet with a huge idiot grin on his face, like he's having a good day. Stall door open, full-on Porky Pig style, idiot grin. This happened probably 10 years ago. I still have PTSD. Story 18. Self-checkout want process card payments, have a bright sign covering the PIN pad saying cash only, and another right above the scanner, so it's impossible to miss. Had a guy rip the sign off of the PIN pad and was confused as to why it won't work. Have multiple people a day completely ignore the signs. It's completely hilarious how these people make it through a day, and scary at the same time because they are out and about driving a car. Also, might add that we don't rely on SEO and always have someone ready to check customers out. Story 19. So not a customer, but a coworker. I work at a gas station convenience store, was restocking pre-made sandwiches in a display cooler, and had a small crate of them that expired. I asked a coworker if she could make a list of the various types of sandwiches and their expiration dates so I could write them off. She said she didn't know how to do that. Without thinking, I said, "Do you not know how to make a list? Or do you not know how to count?" I self-reported to management because I realized that it was incredibly disrespectful and insensitive if she had a learning disability. 3 minutes into explaining what a list was, I had her go outside to do her job as an attendant and to send the other guy in to do it. She was the only coworker that was flat, refused to be taught how to use the register. Story 20. We were in the process of moving locations. It's a grocery store, so this is quite an endeavor. We planned to be down for a few weeks, but that just meant we, the crew, were doing other jobs like setting up at the new location and cleaning at the old one. We announced this move months in advance, had signs everywhere, did every social media post we had access to practically every day for the week leading up. Big signs too. They printed a banner about it and put it over the door. So building is an emptied out, gutted shell. I'm on duty to sweep out the floors for the day. Not bad, I gotta keep all the lost change I found. All day we had to stop people from going inside to shop. All day. We had giant dumpsters out front, big warning signs and caution tape up, but that wasn't enough, I guess. Story 21. We were closed, and a woman lifts a glass emergency door off its track to come in. Scares the crap out of the manager counting the registers. She says, well, the doors, automatic, didn't open. I told him he should have called 911 for attempted robbery. Story 22. Maybe not the stupidest, but it definitely ticked me off. This guy is a regular, and he's not really well liked. He's just kind of annoying and weird, and tells you time about his random health issues. Guy complaining his tub of margarine smelled funny and tasted weird. Forget which exactly, Country Crock or some other brand. Wants to exchange it for a new one. We go to the shelf and we're looking at the dates and making sure the seals are good and thinking maybe he just got one where the deal was bad or something. He takes one off the shelf, opens up the seal and starts smelling it. Says, "See, this one smells funny too." First, there was no weird odor. Second, thanks a lot of hole. Now instead of throwing one of these away, now we have to throw 2 of them out. In a future visit, he says he thinks it was his medication making things taste off. Story 23, I had a customer argue with me because the 2 for 20 t-shirts were ringing up $10 each. I was so baffled when she started to argue. I called my manager, she even got a calculator out and showed her that 10 plus 10 equals 20. Customer still argued it wasn't right, ended up leaving pissed off. Second one, I worked for Kohl's and had a customer come in with a return for Kmart demanding I do it. Insisted that he saw on the news that Kohl's was doing Kmart returns. Mind you, I think this was when Sears bought Kmart. I was polite, explained that I couldn't. He started calling me names, ended up taking his own shoe off and throwing it at me. Kicker is my manager technically had to call the police because it was assault. The dude showed up just as police got there several hours later to ask if his shoe was in lost and found. Story 24. I had a customer who once asked to buy cigarettes. Policy at my store is I have to see the ID. I can't just look at the person and assume they're over 21, dumb as duck, but looked old enough to buy them, but I have to ask for ID. Here's how the interaction went. Customer, can I get a pack of cigarettes? Me, okay, ID, please. Customer, what? I've never heard about being carded for cigarettes, y'all. It took every fiber of my being not to reply. Well, have you always looked over 40? I get it that it's inconvenient for you, somehow, to dig through your wallet for your ID. I mean, it's not, but they're lucky I'm saying please. I was taught please means there's an option to say no. In the situation of you wanting alcohol or cigs, I just have to go ID. There's no please because there's no option to say no. Story 25. I don't know how to describe it, but we have these metal freestanding sign holders that hold like a 8.5 by 11 price sign. Someone, boomer obviously, pulled one out from under a pallet and was using it to drag saucepans off a high display shelf. When I asked him to stop, he said, "Well, how the hell else do you expect us to buy them?" I told him they were displays. You don't buy them. You buy the ones that come packaged on the shelf. Apparently, we were the idiots for not making it more obvious that this wasn't the way to buy a saucepan. Story 26. Who knew that walking into a grocery store would automatically make people stupid? 1. A customer's credit card didn't work at self-checkout, so they wanted to go through a lane. I had to break the news that it doesn't matter because the card will decline wherever they try paying in the store. 2. A customer comes to the customer service desk and demands the sale price on an item. I checked her receipt, then went to check the item price. She was charged correctly. She insisted that I was wrong when I again tried to explain that the sales price is more expensive than she paid. I wasn't going to argue anymore, so I paged a manager to the desk. Story 27. Have had multiple instances of customers walking up to my front door when we're closed for some reason. System update, power outage, whatever, and just pull excessively on the door like it's stuck. No, it's locked because we're closed for the time being. Genius. While we have 6-8 signs on the door stating as much. Story 28. I had a customer one day got mad because we had bilingual sale signs in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. He pointed to a Spanish sign and asked me what it says. I told him it says our sale. He got into my face and demanded how is he supposed to know since he speaks in English. I pointed to the large window sign and said, "Well, it says it right there in English as well as it's in English all over the store." He began to scream at me that he deserves a discount. And I said, why? We try to cater to everyone. So why should I give him a special discount? His wife had to tell him to leave because he was a grown man yelling at a woman half his age. She apologized and said he's just hungry. I think he was just acting entitled. Story 29. Man called the pizza place I managed, claimed his food was wrong. He texted a pic and only one slice was left, had the correct toppings. He wanted a refund. I told him no. He snapped, "How about I come up there and beat your ass?" I rolled my eyes and responded, "Doors open until midnight," which made him hang up. 20 minutes later, a truck tears into the parking lot. Guy jumps out and pulls on one of our double doors. It won't open, always locked that side. He calls me, screaming, calling me pussy. I walked up and calmly opened the other of our double doors, had been unlocked the entire time, and invited him on. When I didn't back down, and he heard the laughter from the customers, he hung his head and walked away. Angry equals dumb, I guess. Story 30. I work for Sainsbury's. A customer asked if we sold an item and showed me a picture on her phone. I politely informed the lady that it's a Tesco's product and she would need to go to Tesco. She insisted I look on my stock app for this item. And again, I told her it was a Tesco's own brand product and she was in a Sainsbury's. She then proceeded to start shouting how it was disgusting. We don't sell it, as she was in the supermarket and didn't want to go to Tesco. She asked to speak to a manager. I just walked off, never got the manager, and I think she still might be in the store looking 6 months on story 31. There are big 8-foot signs indicating self-checkout/card-only area and serve checkout, returns, exchanges, and cash payments at the other location. This time of year, we do queue busting, which is 2 staff members with a huge Lipop pole sign reiterating the same information, plus the staff members themselves verbally directing the customers to the right area. But no, the customers always know better and join the wrong long queue only to find they ducked up. It's a one-way system. You cannot exit without a receipt or a SCO host barcoding you out. So the stupid donkeys have to go all the way around to join the back of the correct queue. Occasionally, they try to fight their way through the entrance area. It's silly season, people. Apologies to Donkey's Story 32. Customer comes in, talks to an associate and asks, "Can I wire my whole house up with doorbell wire?" Associate tells them, "No, certainly not. It's not rated for the load and will ducking melt. Call an electrician." Customer, "I'm going to do it anyway. Why the duck did you ask in the first place?" Story 33. I was in the store a half hour past closing. Automatic doors closed, not opening. Some of the lights are off. I'm doing my usual rounds of front-facing products, and I walk toward the front of the store to find that those doors have been opened. Sure enough, there's a dude in aisle 3 shopping for stuff. I go to him. "Sir, you can't be in here. We're closed." "Oh, can I pay for the stuff I got?" Basket is about half full. "No, registers are closed. Can't you open one up?" "No, I cannot. I do not have the authorization to do that." Nor would I if I did. It was something to that effect. But like, if the door is not opening for you, why wouldn't you think that means we're closed? Story 34. This one woman who came in frequently to our store being rude. One time she pushed a pregnant lady, very visibly so, in the aisle because she was too fat and in her way. Crap was wild. Pregnant lady crying, crazy woman cursing her and her husband out for being in her way. Husband trying to throw hands so the woman leaves them alone, the manager trying to get her to leave. She screams even louder that it's her store and they were in her way and she's going to sue for discrimination until the cops get called and she disappears. That poor pregnant lady. It was so sad to see her crying from stress and humiliation. Story 35. I work at a grocery store. We close at 10 p.m. every single night. There are posters outside displaying what times we open and close. There are posters inside displaying what times we open and close. The website displays what time we open and close, and to top it all off, we make closing calls at the same time every single night. So I'd like to know why it is that customers will come in 5 minutes before we close to do their shopping. It's the same ducking customers too. They know when we close. We watch them rush around the store every single night and complain as they're checking out that they wish they had more time to shop or that they forgot things. How about come in earlier next time, you duckwit? Story 36. A customer came in and told me what she wanted. I showed her the exact thing. Then she asked, "Do you know where else I can get it besides here?" A customer pointing to the price on the back of a book and asking, "How much is this?" A customer using a clothing rack as a changing room. A customer asking, "Is this for sale?" while holding an item labeled not for sale. Story 37. Ugh, I could write a chapter book on idiot customers. But here's the most recent pretty hilarious one. Had the aisle blocked off because I was getting down a pallet with a forklift and it's policy that we block off the aisle while using power lift equipment. This guy, who is obviously completely oblivious to absolutely everything, walked straight into the aisle blocker and still kept walking straight. We had to yell, "Sir, this aisle is temporarily blocked off." Then he turns around. Scary that person drove to the store. He can't even pay attention to what's in front of him when he's walking. For the record, these are the brighten your face, yellow, OSHA safe aisle blocker banners. They're hard to miss. Story 38. It's the constant "do you work here?" while I'm literally behind the cash wrap counter, logged into a computer, standing in front of it, with a walkie on and a shirt that says the store name. Opening boxed up product that is directly behind a tester to see what it looks like when the tester's right in front of it. Not reading the back of products and asking me where products are, instead of looking with their own eyeballs. Seeing a full-ass line of people in front of me, then coming to the side of the cash wrap to ask questions and attempt to pull me away from the line of people waiting to check out. Story 39. Worked at a certain dollar store that is no longer. Everything's a dollar. Answered the phone stating the name of the company and our location. Me. Thank you for calling Dollar Store at location. How can I help you? Customer. Dead silence for like 10 seconds. Me. Hello? Customer. Obs confused. You said this is Dollar Store? Me. Yes, sir. How can I help? Customer. still confused. This isn't other kind of dollar store? Me. No, sir. Customer. Are you sure? Me, sir. I'm pretty sure I know where I work. Customer. Oh yeah, didn't think about that. Hangs up. That happened about 8 years ago, and it still makes me laugh. Story 40. I have too many to remember just one specific instance. They all melted together in my brain. But I get a lot of older women who have absolutely no initiative, and their husbands always did everything for them. I work in a gas station, and I'm constantly having to go out and help them with gas because their husband died, and they are too scared or stupid to follow the prompts on the pump screen. I know they're pathetic and uneducated, as in like how to do everyday things, boomers, but I've just about run out of sympathy. It's not that hard to pump gas and select your discount. Story 41. Guy left his phone in the fitting rooms, and my manager told me to take it to one of our checkouts since it's safer there. When I had come back from taking his phone there, he was frantically looking for his phone, so I calmly explained, it was at X checkout. He screams at me, "Who has my phone?" "Sir, X checkouts has your phone. They're just down that way." "It's out of the store." "No, sir, it's at this checkout, just down there. Just ask the counter and they will give it to you." After pointing in the exact direction multiple times, he got fed up with me and hopefully found his phone. Story 42. Had a lady ask me if the whole refill package of Neapolitan wafers costs what the price is listed. Obviously, the price is only for one package. Apparently that wasn't listed clearly enough. Then she proceeded to gather up a bunch of candy, and as soon as I scanned it and she paid for it, she decided to give it all back because they were in total €1 more expensive as listed, and started to berate me, saying it's unacceptable, all for €1 difference. And then she goes out and drives away in her brand new AMG. Amazing. Story 43. A customer came in and I believe she was in psychosis. I kindly asked her not to smoke in front of the propane tanks, and then she absolutely flipped out, called me every name under the book, just went nuts. We had to lock the doors and call the police right before closing. She stood in the parking lot menacingly and mooned me, flipped me off, and every time I would glance at her, she'd start screaming obscenities. The cops came and it was like a Wild West standoff. She was trespassed. I guess it's not exactly stupid because she was experiencing psychosis, but still crazy terrifying. Story 44. I live in Florida. This may just be a stupid people/Florida folks thing in general, but the amount of people who wait until either A, a hurricane is less than 24 hours away, or B, the day of a holiday to come and try to buy bags of ice from our store. You're too late then. Especially during the last hurricane, people were mad that I wouldn't ask a coworker to go make them a bag of ice. The room with the ice machines has no air conditioning, and it gets hotter in there than it is outside. I'm not asking them to go barbecue themselves for your entitled ass. Plan ahead better. Story 45. I work at a high-end retailer. People can say that retail is retail, but this type is fun and wonderful. Our whole staff was exhausted as most during holiday time. I had a woman come up to me the other day. She told me, "It is such a shame that good workers such as yourselves should be working 2 days before Christmas. You all look so tired, but you all are awesome. I hate this for you." I said to her, "Well, with people such as yourself shopping 2 days before Christmas, we do not normally have any other choice." She was silent for a moment. She paid and left the store. Story 46. I worked at World Market for years. The massive warehouse doors have employees-only signs very clearly posted, and the bathrooms have giant signs hanging from the ceiling so they can be viewed from far away. I was in the warehouse with an employee grabbing something when a lady rounded the corner and stood there, confused where the bathrooms were, and she actually seemed mad at us that the bathrooms weren't in the warehouse. Not only had she gone through the swinging employees-only doors, but she'd made her way halfway through the warehouse, which is stacked to the ceiling with boxed furniture and pallets, and almost to the loading dock. Story 47. I work at a fast casual pizza restaurant, think like a Chipotle, and we share a building with a Starbucks. Their fire alarms went off, causing ours to go off too. We didn't evacuate because Starbucks was a false alarm, so there was no danger, but couldn't turn it off because the fire department had to. My manager goes to the back, as in a place where no customer should be, dangerous tools, money, chemicals, etc., and a dad follows him back trying to tell him where to turn off the fire alarm. We now have a sign that says staff only on the door, although it should be pretty obvious. Story 48. Sometimes I get to the store early because my ride, which is my dad, has to drop me off early because he's going to work early. I look out the window and usually my manager and I see people trying to pump gas when the pumps are clearly turned off, no lights inside, and maybe 2 lights on inside for us, and then get frustrated and go across the street where the other store is completely lit up because they are open 24 hours. But the canopy lights are very clearly off and the pumps are clearly turned off and they still tried. Story 49. At the home decor store I work at, people have taken all of the plates down out of plate holders to try to buy the holders, or all of the product out of our very beat-to-heck baskets that hold them to try to buy the baskets. Thank you for the extra work I now have to put. Displays back together. This on top of, do you sell bookshelves? No, we don't. Oh, well, can I buy that? Points at the shelving with all our products on it. Why do so many people want to buy the fixtures? Story 50. From the register, I can see down a few aisles, one of which is a candy aisle. This guy comes in with his kid, and they walk up the candy aisle. The kid is looking at the candy, appearing to be sick. She bends over to throw up. Her dad stands there holding her in place, facing the candy, and she pukes all over the shelf. There was a trash can just a few feet away. Had to close the aisle and throw away hundreds of dollars worth of product and spend the next hour washing and sterilizing the aisle. Story 51. Our store was closed due to a power outage in the shopping center, but the company had a few employees stay behind to direct customers to the next closest store / be ready for when power came back on. I opened the door to tell this woman we were closed and had no power, and she walks fast past me, taking me by surprise and saying she just needed to use the bathroom. I'm yelling how we are closed, but she did not care. She then proceeded to take a huge dump with the door open because it was dark and she couldn't see.